now we're going to meet Filip. And I guess you're familiar with the situation where every morning you walk into your office with your colleagues, same employer, working with the same systems, drinking the same coffee, and representing the same brand. Organizations has the very strong tendency to strive to be one. However, Filip would argue that the unifying mechanisms we have today are failing, because the digital workplace has the potential to bring people together in completely new ways where the physical and the digital actually converge. Filip is here to tell us how the Flemish Green Party and the Port of Antwerp Authority are working with converging their physical and their digital workplace. So while he's being mic'd up, please give him a warm welcome.
So I'm Filip. As a matter of fact, I'm employed with two companies, the Port of Antwerp Authority. In 2013 I started there, and in 2015 I was giving presentations like this, and after one of these presentations a guy asked me, can you help us doing the same stuff with us? And that was the Green Party. So this is how I also ended as an employee in the Green Party, 2 half-time jobs. And as I'm doing presentations, people have questions. Sometimes people ask for advice. I needed to set up my own company just to write some invoices. That's not my main ambition. And so I also help some other smaller companies in implementing their digital workplaces. This is my professional mission, my calling. Somewhere a God called me, Filip, this is your mission. And just read it. It's about the challenges managers have today. The 21st century manager really need to focus on making knowledge work and knowledge workers more effective. The 20th century manager succeeded in doing the same thing for laborers in factories. This is a quote from 1999. I would say I just added 1 year. It's a symbolic 20 years. When I look around in the kitchen of the companies I visit, then I would say we have barely started. And the first thing you want to do is understand the nature of knowledge work. And I started with this quest I think some 15 years ago. And I would say these are all domains that very much interest me. I discovered them as, well, I need to go deeper into that. I'm not a specialist in these things. But somewhere I see, well, the pieces fit together. And there's still a lot of work to do. I do not have the time in one life to do that all, but it's very fascinating. Some domains, and certainly also design, is mentioned. This is a thread in what I do, how I do it, how I think about it. And this is also why I'm here. So it's very fascinating to be at a conference like this focusing on design. When we think about what is knowledge works, I have 4 slides I want to share with you, of which I think this is really important. First of all, we solve problems. And in many cases, yes, we get problems. We don't know what the problem is. We need to take decisions. And this process of solving problems is quite complex. It's full of uncertainty. You want to reduce this uncertainty. And it's not easier these days because the world that is surrounding us has grown volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So this is difficult, but it's a good future for knowledge workers because they will keep their job. They only have one resource to do their job. That's information. That's all. Information that is in the minds of other people, so you ask questions. Information that is in repositories, in databases. In my mind, I need to remember it. Information that is made on the spot to better understand things, and that's 95% of the information you work with. That is, I think, the domain we need to make more efficient. So what you do with information by having conversations with people, you put things in formation. You add structure. You want to grasp it, to capture it. So you ask questions, you get answers, you better understand it. And the answer is, let's say, the output. But it's a process towards that answer that is so interesting. And the last one It's a myth that knowledge work is a solitary thing. There is not a solitary scientist in his cave with all his papers. Even this person is in a network of peers who comment on his stuff, who ask extra questions, who say yes or no. It's teamwork, and I need other people to think with me because my capacity is really limited. I also need the other people as a kind of soundboard to talk with, to better understand my own ideas. I need them. So knowledge work certainly is teamwork. It always is. And this is a bit of my metaphor to see, well, to model what is knowledge work, and it very much resembles the model that Panos just showed. It all starts with unstructuredness, with I don't understand, it's very vague. And you try to reduce this uncertainty because you try to understand things. And you add structure by questioning. You also have methods. Several methods just help you to add structure to unstructuredness. And so what you do is that you design a whole structuring process to, as a matter of fact, lay an egg. That's the output. It's simplified reality, of course. The drawing of Panos was much more real. But what you do is you use existing information, the small eggs, you produce new information, smaller eggs, but you have lots of conversations. And you grow towards that solution, if there is one. Let's say that traditional information management only focused on the output. We put this in a folder. That's the management of things. I say, well, this does not interest me, the folder. This interests me much more, because there is the profit you can make. And then in the end, you have indeed, well, your product, your decision. We understand it, let's do this. A plan of action. I also use this, let's say, well, better understanding of what knowledge work is to translate it to physical workplaces too. As a matter of fact, I was writing a book on digital workplaces, but the first that has been published this year is one that focuses on physical workplaces. It was a bit by coincidence that this was the first book, Make Room for Knowledge Work, because my experience is with digital workplaces is quite abstract. It's not tangible, and it's quite difficult to sell to managers. Oh yeah, collaboration, we have Slack for that. So I think it was a good idea to produce a more tangible thing, thinking and writing about the physical workplace, explaining what's going on there to make people do their job, to support them, and then transfer this to a model for digital workplaces. But I think this is it. I think indeed, when you think about workplaces, infrastructure is really key because it nudges you, Panos said. Indeed, it nudges you to do things or not to do things. It prevents you from doing things. The red button, very good example too. So it's not only infrastructure, it's just structure. And this is for me the key word, structure, in all these things. So now I have some water. You can just read. Is this a wicked problem? But I think this is indeed what we do. In this whole bunch network of structures, we try to, well, add another structure in which you can resonate with this complex thing. And whether these are business processes, architecture, internal communication, people being there, these are also structures. It all influences each other, so this is a wicked problem. And then we have the ambition. This morning I saw this is such a nice form. It's a bit like the Holy Grail I offer to you. So, okay, but this is also very important, the just enough structure. What I mainly see, management loves the overstructured things. They want to invest money in databases, ERP systems, no problem, as long as it's a database. So I prefer the soup. Okay, and then we are in a CEO's office, and oh yeah, we finished our digital transformation project. This makes me very curious. We finished our digital transformation project. And then you see, when you talk with people, indeed, there are many shades of digital. It reminds me of something Henry Ford never said, but it's a very interesting quote. If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have asked for faster horses. But I gave them a faster car. I'm at the Port of Antwerp. This is one of the first steamboats. You see, in transformations, people are stuck in their old way of thinking. And that's one of the things that we need to help them with. They need to unlearn these old mindsets. So one of the first steamboats well, it was a mechanism for the existing oars of the boat. There was no screw propeller yet, but it came. And so when I ask people what they want in my domain of the digital workplace, they ask for faster paper, better search engines. And in any case, tools will solve it, always. Give us an iPad, an app, the apps. Okay. So this is, for me, then, the digital transformation. A car with a kind of horse in front of it. What are these mindsets? What are these mental models I want people to unlearn? We are stuck in these. First of all, paper. Paper makes people behave in a very transactional way. I give it to you. I pass it through. So in a very serial way. As a matter of fact, paper thinking prevents us from collaborating. Another one is the finished documents. If you want to be professional in a company, you provide people with neat, flawless, decided upon documents, not with draft things. Another one is our mindset that everything can fit in a cabinet, a place for everything, and for everything its place. And this is a very two-dimensional way of thinking and a very limited way of thinking because it prevents us from stepping in this VUCA world that demands complexity, speed, that also asks us really to collaborate day in, day out. And the last one, a very interesting one, is indeed, it's in our mind that we work at an individual desktop, whether it is virtual or not, it's the same mess, but it's my own individual desktop, my private room. And today, we need to step towards an open, transparent workplace. It's necessary, because we have to collaborate. So yes, we need to help people to unlearn. And this is why I say, what I feel I'm doing is, I certainly do not design for simplicity because complexity is reality. This is what I need to cope with. So I design for complexity, which does not mean that I make it complex for people. Certainly not. But I help them to cope with complexity. I don't know whether you are familiar with Ashby's law. Ashby was a mathematician and a cybernetic. And he said that in order to control a system, at least your system needs to have the same level of variety or complexity or more than the system you want to control. So from a linear, serial way of thinking and working, you cannot control this complex world. This is impossible. You need complexity in your organization, literally, how you organize your company to cope with complexity. And of course, we've seen this as a threat in this conference too. Very interesting talks about the new paradigm of how to organize. And this is not a coincidence that we want more liquid companies in which you have all kinds of streams of information, very volatile, because the world surrounding us obliges us to be like this. And this is a new metaphor. This is a new model. From your cabinet, you step into a network. Why? So this is the world surrounding us, which is really the network. You need to be that networked organization yourself inside to be able to hook into that network outside. It was Jirik, is his name Jirik, who talked? No. who talked about, yes, it was Jirik, who talked about Niels Pfleging, indeed a very interesting book. We also have a Belgian guy who wrote an interesting book on networks, and indeed the network always wins. And this is also an interesting book. It's not about wikis, not at all, but it's about the whole philosophy of wikis. People connected, easy collaboration, you have to, because this world demands it from us. And then a real architect, Richard Buckminster Fuller, he once said this, and I do recognize this. Instead of wanting to teach people about, for instance, my case, complexity, emergence, serendipity, all these things, just provide them with a tool that makes them do that, and they will learn it. So the tool indeed is important. We go back to knowledge work. What we see indeed in this VUCA world, the volume of knowledge work just increases. We all grow towards more being a knowledge worker, even in factories. They demand people to be knowledge workers. And when you see this, I focus on that. And we see Thomas' model and my model and other people's model. I do say, for me, I really see knowledge work as design work. People design. It's about this structuring process. To better understand it, you can also think about Panos' context, but this is also a murder has been committed. A team of detectives needs to solve the problem. We need to find the murderer. So they get their room. It's empty, white and empty walls. And the first thing they pin on the wall, a picture of the victim, a map where the victim was found, some other information. And then it happens. All these things they do, they add information, they chunk it, they order it, they reorder it, they connect the dots, they ask questions, they are there before the wall, ask questions, they think out loud. They have dialogues, they have hypotheses which get rejected or affirmed. And then what is interesting, these are iterative cycles. They reorder, they re-ask questions, etc. So this is a process. And there is a kind of structure behind it. These detectives know what steps they take in this process. There is even software now for that. It only helps them. And I say, let's say in giving the arguments that indeed knowledge work for me is a design process, that any problem-solving process is a collaborative sense-making process in which you manipulate information and structure it. And this is why me, myself, as an information manager, I'm very much focusing on this process. Also important, you have a specific purpose in mind, so you work towards a goal. How do you make this more efficient? Well, indeed, I think I don't design the work processes, but I design places that facilitate people to do a better job, which means for knowledge work, well, they design their own work processes. Okay. First of all, I focus on the tool. Tools are not the details. Sometimes I have discussions with people, also in conferences. People say, oh, it's just a tool. No, for me, the tool is very important. The tool enables you to do things. What I see today in digital workplaces is very heavily tool-oriented. IT departments just provides tools, just do it. And you get 25 if you have the Microsoft Office stack, the Microsoft 365 stack. You get 25 tools, just do it. People don't know what to use for what, and lots of redundancy. And what they do is, as a matter of fact, this problem-solving process, they just fragment it in tools. You certainly have had it that, oh yeah, we talked about that. Was it by mail? Was it in Yammer? No, I think it was in Skype. Maybe we took some notes in OneNote. So you create all kinds of silos that fragment your process, and people get mad of this. They can't find it. So search engines need to solve the problem. What I need is one information space for one problem-solving process. I need this, one. Not a fragmentation, not 25 tools that also fragment my output. So I want the content, the collaboration, the communication, the coordination, but also the outcome in one space. And you weave. This is a nice metaphor, but you do this. You weave the text, the textile. You weave the text and context. This is what you're doing. It's all connected. And this is why, indeed, for me, this is the wiki. And the wiki, I did not wake up one day and say it must be a wiki. So it was through the use of it that we saw, look, what a potential in this thing. It really changes our behavior. It makes us think differently. It's not about folder structures and Word documents. It's very simple. Make content, hyperlink it to other content, and you have emergent structures. You would be, I will not say shocked, but surprised how many time people spend to talking about structure in the wiki, because it grows quite easily chaotic. So you need to talk about adding structure. They do it. That is where the meta level also start existing. And it's a platform, so which is not a detail. It's a network of people and information and things. We are using Confluence for that from Atlassian. It's an Australian company. I certainly don't want to have the tool discussion. But for me, it's simple. If companies ask me to help them, it certainly is not Microsoft 365. I will not start it up. And I cannot find a better wiki because it's much more than a wiki. You somewhat turn the world upside down. You start with making content, and then you can do all kinds of function on the content. So tasks are in the wiki, for instance. I will show you. And this is interesting. A wiki is, in fact, it's a small World Wide Web. It's a small one. It has the same basic principles, content and hyperlinks, nothing more than that. Hypertext markup language. And the web started, this is the birth certificate of the web. It was an information management proposal by Tim Berners-Lee, who asked the management of CERN some money to do a better job together with other researchers all over the world to better collaborate with information. So he said, this is not it. I have an idea. If we have something like a hyperlink we can click on, etc., etc., we create another way of looking at information, a web of information. He certainly did not realize what he started up. He built on the hyperlink, which is a principle introduced by Nelson, and before him Vannevar Bush. But look, Nelson, what was he doing? A file structure for the complex, the changing, and the indeterminate. This is the VUCA. How do we better cope with complexity? Not with a folder structure. And you get this free bonus. I love this. I've seen this. It changes teams, it changes companies, because you provide them with a tool who changes their behavior, and they don't know. Because this tool nudges them by default, and that's the big difference with Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft has a wiki too, somewhere, if you can find it. Google has the same concept. They once had waveforms, Google Waves, that was it. It was splendid. It was much more like this. It only had 2 million subscribers, so not profitable. They stopped it. So you nudge people to collaborate, to be open, to share information, to structure, because other people say, well, I can't find it, help me. You create easy feedback loops, so important in teams. So this is a free bonus you get. You change behavior of people and teams and organizations. It certainly does not come by itself. You need to help it, certainly. Second one, it's not only about tools. For me, this is a foundation. It's also about introducing a bunch of new skills. This certainly is not evident that you see people work, well, the wiki way, because we have a wiki. No, what we see, many starters with a wiki think Word documents in wiki. No, chunk your information, chunk it. Link. So they need to learn that. And so yes, this wiki can create cognitive ergonomics, get away from that bunch of tools, go to content, hyperlink content. Yes, if, of course, you also focus on, for instance, this. You have the same problem in Yammer, in Slack, and all these things. People talk. Is there somebody who can manage these conversations? You can manage that. So what's important? I curate it. I make a synthesis. You can learn that. I share it with somebody else. You should look at this. You also have input for that. So conversations need to be managed. You can learn that. in most cases, are just not managed. For instance, also, the chunking, I talked about it, the hyperlinking, I talked about it. Well, you need to show the value of that to people before they do it. But certainly also it's a platform. You do community building. And this is also, I would say, a kind of a profession. You need to be skilled in that. I will look into one, work out loud, as an example. Have you ever heard of it? I want to see hands if you ever heard about the concept working out loud. Some 5 people? It's a bit hyping these days, working out loud. You can find it on Twitter too. I give you 2 contexts in which it's clear. A physical workplace, a cockpit, pilot flying, pilot non-flying. In a very procedural way, they work out loud. Flaps out, V1 reached, what is it, landing gear down, etc., etc. And why do they do it? They must do this to create a situational awareness in the cockpit, so both know what to do, what not to do. So they coordinate their work by the working out loud stuff. You certainly also know this context, Hell's Kitchen. Yes, chef, no chef, 2-minute chef, 3 chicken breast chef, etc. chef. Why do they do this? For coordination. This is a hell of a job to get 6 different hot plates at the same moment on a table with a client. This is not easy. So these working out loud moments are very essential for coordination and to get the things done. And as a matter of fact, they do not talk to the chef. They feed the system. Because the guy from the salads hears the guy from the meat saying, 1 minute, chef, then he knows I need to start. So it's not the chef, it's the system. And this is what you also create in physical and digital workplaces, situational awareness, so important to know what's going on so I can move on. And it's a system that moves on, with or without you. And I love this image. My preferred bird is a swallow. These are not swallows. I still don't know whether I prefer the European or the African, for those who... But this, well, yes, this is for me a very interesting metaphor. It's more than a metaphor. To think about self-steering and self-management teams. You see that flow is a result first of some simple principles. For instance, in Morningstar 2, they have some simple principles. But certainly, the purpose in your team must be clear, and then it all starts with lots and fast feedback loops. That's how this flock of birds works. This is a system of feedback loops. And create in your team situational awareness. How you do that, I can show you. You also need to believe, and this is also a message from, I think his name was Jirik, yes, with the anarchist company, rely on the network, it will happen. So in the past, he was quite nervous about things that didn't happen. Then he said, well, I just leave them. And this is what I also see. Believe that the network will work. It works. And then you see, as a matter of fact, in a team, when you work, you communicate, you collaborate, and all the time you learn from each other. And this is how it works. I believe in it because I see it happening. For me, it's certainly not fictitious. And this workplace is with all these feedback loops, for me, that's the core. I had a guy, this is Sheriff from Atlassian. These are the headquarters in Sydney. He showed me around, and this was so interesting. This building is full of whiteboards, the project rooms, and many of these things are not in separate rooms, they are just in the corridors. I also suspect that they use walls to write on that were not at all intended to write on. But what he did, and this was so interesting, I only saw it later and I had a picture of that. He always watched that. And he said, interesting, they are doing that. And this is informing the system and getting aware about situation. So working out loud is make your work observable. That's one, you share it, you make it observable. As a matter of fact, you don't know who you share it with. It's just you make it transparent. and you talk about it. So you add a meta layer. And this is also very interesting. And this is what I see indeed on digital workplaces. You have activity streams, you have people sharing stuff, you have people mentioning other people. This is not difficult to understand, but this is also interesting. One of the projects I work with, the team leader in the beginning easily started blogging about the work, the problems, what we do this week. This was so interesting for the people to know, situational awareness, that they also started blogging their work. Sometimes people say, yes, but that's too much. I can't follow it. No problem. What you do is just scan the title, the first sentence, you know it's not for me, and skip it. We all know how to read Facebook and Twitter and all these things. So it's just the same mechanism. And of course, remember, you also have people who are able to curate stuff. So I rely on my network to get informed with important information. And this is all conference. This is the wiki. This is the Kanban board of all work that is going on in a team. So I get informed what we are doing, where risks are in projects. So this is what you do, and this is so interesting that you see on a platform people, well, making mistakes out loud. But this is not a mistake, it was just a wrong hypothesis. And somebody said, no, this will not work. You can see people discuss out loud. In the past, this was the black box. It was not grasped, it just evaporated. Now we have something, as I also call this, it's a very interesting context for process discovery. You see processes exist, or start existing. We've had the tool, that is very important. We invest in building skills. And the last thing I want to focus on is we need to design a process, how to work with this thing. And this is what we mostly forget. Finding the structuring modus. Because it's continuous structuring at several levels, I will just give you an example of one structuring process, for me the most important one on this wiki. And this is, we build dynamic cases. We already had a murder, you remember? We opened a case for that. Well, it's just the same principle. We just say on the wiki, we have a new problem, open a new case. With the ambition, case closed. That's it, it's very, very simple. New problem, new case, open it. And what happens then is, at that one spot, that's your information space, everything happens. You add information, you talk about it, communication, you ask questions, you collaborate, you add tasks, maybe you have some business intelligence reports, you put them in the case, they will help you. But it all happens in the case. Nowhere else. Yes, you can meet in person, but we want a trail of that in the case. This is an example of a case. It does not look sexy at all. No problem. So in this case, it was just a piece of software that needed to be purchased. This is a case going on. It started the 10th of March 2014, and this is the most previous information that was added. This is just, let's say, the welcome page of a case. Very important, each case has its purpose. What's the problem we are focusing on? It has been described, difficult for wicked problems. And what's the expected result for this case? Expected, it can change. Who owns the case? This person will see to it that the case gets closed. He's responsible. Who else is involved in the case? And then some other things, for instance, links to other existing cases. This is context. These are all hyperlinks. And for instance, one note is about a price offer because we want to purchase a thing. And this is the note. I've clicked on it. This is the offer. We receive them by email from a third party. We put them in a wiki page as an attachment. We see them. You can click them. We start discussing with other people. This is real. This is not fake. This is not hello world stuff. We have discussion. For instance, here I ask a question to one of my co-workers. He answers, okay, another question. So you see, it's a bit a reversed world. We create the context around the documents. Suppose what context you have of documents that are in folder structures. There is no context, just the name of your folder structure or folder and the name of your file. And you add new, we call it nodes, add a node to a case each time it's relevant to add new information to the case. So that's not mathematics. You give it a good name so that people also can, as a matter of fact, read the case. You read it. It's a narrative. Managers who want to get updated about the case, they read the last 5 titles of the most recent notes. They are up to date. Do they want to know more? They click and they read more. And these are all the cases. It's all the same. In the Kanban board, you click on it, you get in cases. So you see what's going on, what has been finished, where the risks are, etc., etc. And this is a small calculations we once did, because indeed it's a business, you need a business case for your whole thing. You said, okay, we will do calculation. Of course, it's not easy, because we needed to calculate if we had not done this in a case, then the old way of working, what would it have been? At least more than 100 mails, all stored in people's inboxes, and there are people who manage their inboxes. I don't. Certainly not. This is lost time. 30 separate threads in social network platforms like Yammer, Skype, Slack, but in a silo. It's not in the context, it's not in the case, it's not connected, it's just there. This is also an interesting one. Task management. Oh yeah, we have an app for that. But you separate the task from its context. You just create a list. Trello now has been acquired by Atlassian, which is interesting, but I don't see the real integration yet with Confluence, so I don't use Trello. And you also create records in a case, and then you put these in a record management system or a repository, or I don't know what. So you fragment it, but what's also very interesting, and this you can really count, you spend much less time to meetings, because this was a funny case in the past. You have a question, put it on the agenda for the team meeting of next week, which means I wait for a week to get an answer. Maybe to hear there is no time in this meeting, so we will look into it next meeting. So this makes me wait 2 weeks. So now I just ask the question in the case. Maybe I mention a coworker, he reads it, he answers it. That's quite easy. But I think the whole core of the story is that indeed you have one platform. You have one network of information. It's all tied together. You have many levels of different structures, very much structure, almost no structure, but it's all connected. And when people say, this is not really my thing, well, let's look into how we add more structure, for instance. This is often a question, but not too much. The adaptive case management thing, or dynamic case management thing, it exists. I did not invent it. But in Washington, we won a prize with this because it was, according to the jury, it was very innovative to put it on a wiki. This was new, because adaptive case management exists as kind of business process management systems. It's a database, and people in the database, they want more unstructuredness, and this is very difficult in databases. With a wiki, we start with less structure and build as much structure as necessary. And so the jury loved that very much. And with this pride, I certainly want to thank you for your attention. If you have more questions, and certainly feedback, you know, systems dive, no feedback, please give them. Thank you very much.